Uh, check. Okay, how's that? All right, how's that, Lawanda? Let me know if you can hear that the volume is better. I think my um, mic was a little unplugged. I'm looking at the volume. It looks like it should be good. Give me a thumbs up if the volume is better. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. All right, so in case you missed the opening, since my mic was not completely connected, welcome to Chalk Talk. And I'm talking about Super Bowl Sunday. I want to know if you watched the game, what you thought. What are your thoughts about the game? What was your favorite moment? And I really want to know what you thought about halftime. There are people who loved it, and there are others who are somehow falling off a cliff with being offended. So wherever you are, no judgment. I just let you know what you thought about the halftime show. Also, if you are tuning into the show, let me know where you're tuning in from. I just would love to know if you're in Houston. If so, what part of town? If you're someplace else, tell me that. You can just drop it in the chat. But if you had any highlights that you saw, things that you liked from the weekend throughout Super Bowl, there were pre-games, there was the NFL honors with those awards. What'd you think about all of the stuff leading up to Super Bowl Sunday? Let me know. Let me hear from you on that. And of course, today we're gonna because now the NFL season 2021 season is officially over. You know what that means when it comes to football? It's time for free agency. Free agency opens up in March. The draft is at the end of April. And so these next couple of months are going to move really fast, right? What's going to happen with some of these quarterbacks? Is Aaron Rodgers going to retire? I believe that Big Ben Roethlisberger is having his news conference today. It may be actually happening right now, or at least soon. It may be about midday, where he's going to officially announce his retirement. What will the Pittsburgh Steelers do for a quarterback? And where do you guys think that Deshaun Watson will ultimately end up? You're usually asking me. Now I'm asking you. Where do you think he's going to end up? Will he still go to Miami? Is that where he wants to go? Would he consider going to a place like Pittsburgh, who, when you want to play for a coach like Mike Tomlin? Is there some talk about maybe he would go to Tampa? What do you think about that? Where will there be much movement with quarterbacks this postseason? A couple of other names I want to throw out. Carson Wentz. What's going to happen? Will Indianapolis bring him back? Will he be a free agent? Will he be starting for another team next NFL season, at the start of the season? What's going to happen with Carson Wentz? And speaking of quarterbacks that bring up a lot of questions, what's going on with Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray has played 3 years for the Arizona Cardinals. He did not have a great postseason. And last week, or earlier this week, no, it was last week, he completely scrubbed his account, his social media accounts. Anything that said Cardinals, he removed it. So there's nothing on his social media that says anything about the team that he's quarterback one for, the Arizona Cardinals. What's up with that? Is that the way to handle it? So what you see, if you go to Kyler Murray's social media, you see him in his Oklahoma, him playing for Oklahoma, and you see stuff with the Oakland A's, because remember, he was also drafted as a baseball player. There's nothing about the Arizona Cardinals. It's just gone, scrubbed. So there's a lot of the thought is that he wants a new contract, and I guess maybe they're not giving it to him. I really don't know. I mean, I have not obviously talked to Kyler Murray and really dug a whole lot into that, but it just seems like not the right way to handle it, right? You are the quarterback, you're the leader, and leadership has got to be about more than just you. And so he's not exhibiting great leadership qualities right now. That just doesn't seem like the most mature way to handle it. So what's going to happen? Will they get it worked out and everybody hug and then they're great, ready to move forward to next season? Or could this be a really big deal? Like, could it be a big deal for the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray? What has to change so that they can all get back into a kumbaya kind of state, or at least one that's productive for them to move forward toward their goal, which is obviously trying to win a Super Bowl. So what's up with Kyler Murray? I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Not a real mature move by the young quarterback from up near Dallas. At any rate, hey, good morning. And again, thank you for the note about the volume, LaWanda. Good morning, Charles Lamar Drayton. Welcome. A couple other things. Well, a lot has happened since we were together last week. And again, thank you guys for switching and tuning in the afternoon and being patient with the shifts just because of what was happening with the Texans last week. Lovie Smith, of course, is the new head coach. Pep Hamilton is the offensive coordinator. Lovie is going to call the defensive plays, so I doubt that they'll name a defensive coordinator. We'll see, but he made it very clear last week that he will be continue to call the defensive plays. I heard somebody call in on another show, and they were asking about Romeo Cornell. And the host was saying, like, what do you need him for? And, here's what I say about Romeo Cornell. Maybe he's ready to be done, but if he's not, and they still want to pay him, let them pay him. I mean, there are a lot of people around the league getting a check, and you may feel like they're not really necessary. So I'm not going to hate on Romeo Cornell cashing in on his years of experience in this National Football League, if in fact it's something that is helpful for the team and something that, really more importantly, is something that he wants to do, and they're still willing to pay him to do it. He may be ready to just say, yeah, I'm good, I'm going to go home and watch football on television. But whatever he decides, I'm just going to go on record as saying I'm fine with it, because they are paying a whole lot of people a whole lot of money for doing a whole lot less. All right, so get out of Romeo's pockets and don't be as concerned about that check, because that is not hurting the Houston Texans organization. So the Texans will see how they finish out their staff, and as they start getting ready for free agency, what will they do? Will they make a move and deal Laramie Tunsil, who clearly didn't really want to be here? I'm just going to say it. He didn't really want to be here, I don't believe. And so I would move on from him, unless you get some kind of commitment and you're sure, and buy-in from him. You have him, and you have Titus Howard. That's something that you could work with. They do have to upgrade the offensive line in terms of personnel. They've got to make some upgrades. Obviously, they've got to get a running back. They need an outside, an edge pass rusher. If they don't re-sign Justin Reed, which we thought was pretty much a done deal that they would not re-sign him, but now that Lovie Smith is the head coach, does it change things? Does Lovie Smith go to Caserio and say, listen, I did you a solid, because let's be clear, he did. I want Justin. And Justin's a free agent, and he's been one of the more consistent and reliable players in that defense. And so we got to pay him if you want to keep him, because if you don't want to pay him, somebody will. So will Justin Reed be a guy that the Texans make an investment in to bring back for what would be his second contract? He is now a free agent. There's so many unanswered questions with this Houston Texans organization. They clearly are planning to go into, or at least it looks like, the next season with Davis Mills, as their number one quarterback, at least at this point. So do they go get another veteran? What do you think they do at quarterback? I don't think they draft one. Definitely not with one of the early picks. But you don't need basically two young quarterbacks if you're gonna. Who's gonna be the backup? I haven't heard them say that Tyrod Taylor is not coming back. I would not expect him to come back. I imagine he's going to go someplace, or try to go some place where he can maybe play. And I don't see them letting him really compete for the starting job here. I think if they've made a commitment that Davis Mills is our guy for now, then they're going to go with Davis Mills. But who knows? Like, there's so much that we just don't know, that we will know as free agency gets underway and as the draft comes and goes, what teams shake out, what it looks like. Aaron Rodgers, who kind of sounded like maybe he would retire when he accepted his NFL MVP award, but then maybe he won't. Does he go to Denver? Does he stay with Green Bay? Does he consider maybe Indianapolis? Do they try to make a run for an Aaron Rodgers? What happens? So many questions about what could happen this NFL offseason. You're listening to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. And there's a lot that we'll find out about this about this NFL free agency, this NFL offseason as free agency gets underway in January. In March. A couple of things happened. Of course, we've had a couple of shows since the Brian Flores lawsuit. Brian Flores has amended that lawsuit and to include the Houston Texans, right? I remember a couple of weeks ago that we had we did a special show, and I had our legal expert, attorney Charles Drayton, joining me to really help understand this whole lawsuit, what to expect, how it can move forward. And one of the things we talked about, and one of the things that he talked about and highlighted, is that Brian Flores was going to have a really strong team, right? They were going to have to be strong in terms of, obviously, legally, whatever kind of proof they have or evidence to support these claims. I mean, there's no question that the NFL has an issue with hiring African American coaches. They've got a problem with it. Let me say that the Rooney Rule is not working the way it was in the spirit of which it was created, which is to improve the hiring of African American black coaches, head coaches. It ain't working. So we know that. There's no question about that. And there's really no doubt amongst most people that many of the things that Brian Flores says about the discrimination and the lack of opportunity and the different standards, that those things are true. The issue is, how do you prove it, right? Like, how do you prove those things? And so when we talked about it, like, the onus is obviously on the plaintiff to say, here are my facts that support these claims. Since then, he has amended his lawsuit to include the Houston Texans, right? So that's another, because he didn't get the job, right? He's saying that it was because of him filing the lawsuit, and he's calling it retaliation. So I don't really know how all of this is helping him. But one of the things that we talked about was this need to have a really good communication strategy, right? You've got to tell your stories often, and you've got to tell them and get them out front. And because, listen, if you don't tell your story and define your message, somebody else will. But you also need to have good messages. And so I don't know that the retaliation story is a great one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. And, it's just been a lot over the past week, right? You've got the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins, McDaniels, who is identifying himself as a human being, because heaven forbid you call him a black man or biracial. His father is black, he says, but he just has always identified as a human being. So happy Human Being Month to you, Coach McDaniel. So yeah, it's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. And so in Miami, they just fired Brian Flores. They hired McDaniel, who of course is the human being person. And Flores has amended his lawsuit to include a claim against the Texans for retaliation. So, of course, listen. Um, the Texans are never going to admit to any of those things, and that's really hard to prove. And so I don't really know what the strategy is for Brian Flores' team, but so far they are not winning the messaging war. And it doesn't mean that he's wrong. Let me be very clear. It doesn't mean that he's wrong. He's just not winning the messaging. He's not winning the messaging battle at this point. So we'll keep watching that and see what happens. A couple other things. I mentioned to you that the Dolphins coach identifies as being a human being. And if you saw, I had a chance to see the press conference. It was really awkward, right? He's been getting a lot of attention, and it has really nothing to do with him on the field. Mike McDaniel, when he was asked about it, is he's multiracial. He has a black father. However, his tone was different. He said this is a quote from him. "It's been very odd, to tell you the truth," McDaniel said. This idea of identifying as something, I think people identify me as something, but I identify as a human being. And my dad's black, so whatever you want to call it, I know there's a lot of people with a shared experience. This is directly from him. So he stumbled through the interview. He was clearly uncomfortable. I guess he didn't like being outed because now he couldn't just pass anymore. I don't know, but it sounded like that. I mean, I probably made it sound a little better than when he actually did it. It wasn't the best. So we had that happen. So all this is going on in the NFL. It's Super Bowl weekend. Of course, there was the game. Remember to drop in the chat your favorite moment and let me know your thoughts about Super Bowl halftime show. And if you thought the commercials, like I thought the commercials this year were not very good. I was very underwhelmed with the commercials. What did you think? Drop it in the chat. Let me know your thoughts about the commercials, about halftime, and if there's something what did you like most about Super Bowl, from all the pregame stuff, the NFL honors leading up to the actual game. Let me know what you thought about that. Did your team win? Did you pick the right team? How did that go for you? Okay. And so, this is great. Our legal expert is weighing in. So Charles said, the law requires employers to not take retaliatory actions against individuals that bring claims of employment discrimination. Since Torres was a finalist for the Texans job, he is alleging the reason he didn't get it was retaliatory. Retaliatory, right. I wonder how you prove that. He was a finalist, the Texans, although now they're trying to say that, they were just, the process was fluid for everybody, and that, yes, Lovie Smith had been a candidate, but we know that he was a finalist and that they met with him twice. So I just wonder how do you prove retaliation? But how do you prove any of those things he's got to prove? He's got a lot to prove, but what it is doing is changing the conversation, or it's amping up the conversation around this problem about head coaches, the lack of black head coaches in the National Football League. Even President Biden over the weekend weighed in on it and said that there's a problem and that the NFL needs to do better. He didn't mandate anything, but he did say, they got a problem over there. They need to take a look at it. So Brian Flores is kind of out here on this island right now by himself. But he did say when he brought the suit forward, he recognized that he could be putting his career on the line. I mean, this could be it. He could never get a chance to coach in the National Football League again. That's very possible. Hopefully that's not the case. But as we know, the fact that Colin Kaepernick never got a shot to play, get another job in the NFL as a quarterback, this is even, I think, bigger, because he point blank is calling out the National Football League and certain teams within the league as well. All right, you listening to Chalk Talk. My name is Kim Davis. Thank you for being a part of today's show. I'm going to hop over to basketball for a moment And there was one of the biggest trades in a really long time. I can't think of when there was one bigger in the National Basketball Association just hours before the trade deadline last week. And it sent James Harden, and I don't have all the, let me pull it up to pull up the trade for you. James Harden, who wanted to go to Philadelphia to be reunited with general manager Daryl Morey. But he didn't really want to come out and say that he wanted a trade because he didn't want the backlash about it. So he didn't really want to say anything about that. Let me give you the details of the trade. But the biggest part of the trade is that James Harden is no longer in Brooklyn with the big. He's no longer part of the big three, and so let's see here. Let me give you. Okay, so here's the trade. So James Harden and Paul Millsap went to Philadelphia, right? From Brooklyn to Philadelphia. And Ben Simmons, who of course has not played since last June when they lost in game 6 to the Hawks. So the 76ers are sending Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks to Brooklyn. All right? So the biggest names in that deal obviously were James Harden and Ben Simmons. Those were the 2 players that really made the deal go. You know, Ben Simmons did not want to be in Philadelphia. He hadn't been playing all season. That they were just not going to be able to circle back and link arms and be a unit, and he's got some challenges. He's dealing with some mental health issues, and it's just hadn't played all season. So Ben Simmons wanted out of Philadelphia, and James Harden wanted out of Brooklyn, although he didn't really want to say it because he didn't want y'all to be mad at him. Okay, that now he has had moved for the second time in 2 seasons because he didn't want to be where he was playing. Remember, we went through this with him at Houston last season. He didn't want to be in Houston. He didn't really want to say it at first, but he showed up looking like he didn't want to be here. He showed up overweight. He was pouting, and in the last press conference, he basically just said, "Man, we just not good. I don't have nothing to say, and I don't see it being any better. They're not good." And he walked out. So he did that, and then he was traded. And so he didn't want to tell people that he wanted out of Brooklyn because he didn't want the public backlash. Man, if you want out, just say it. I want out. So at any rate, that was that. James Harden is now a 76er, although he was in Houston for a couple of days last week, which meant it held up the trade being finalized for everybody. But I digress. He is a 76er. They showed him shooting around at practice yesterday. He has said, he's still got the hamstring issues, although, and that he is not going to play until after the All-Star game. So All-Star game is next weekend. It looks like he's slated to be back about the 25th or so. But yeah, listen, when asked about it, Durant said, James has every right to, decide where he wants to go and live his life the way he wants to. So, Kevin Durant is just trying to move on. Although there was a funny moment last week, a really funny moment, quite frankly, where Kevin Durant and LeBron James were picking the teams for the All-Star game, and I'm gonna see if I can pull it up for you because it was pretty funny. They were picking their teams, and They were doing it during a game. I mean, they were doing it on TNT. The TNT guys were talking to them. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to try to pull it up for you. Let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, so let me go here. So it was a funny moment. I think it's worth sharing, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to let you hear from Stephen Silas because I told you I would do that. So let's go here. Okay, let me make this a little bigger. Okay. So this is LeBron James and Kevin Durant are picking their all-star starters. The game is next week, as I mentioned. And this is before James had said that he would not be playing in the all-star game. So here's them on TNT.
And we're ready to go. LeBron, get us started with the first pick.
Well, I appreciate you guys welcoming me back. So with my first pick in the 2022 NBA All-Star Game, I'm going to go with the hardest playing player in All-Star history, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Okay, so I'm going to speed it up and not.
He's number 2 in the league, scoring 29 points a game, 11 rebounds.
Okay, let's fast forward to where they're getting close to the end. Okay.
And with my next pick, I'm going to take the wild card.
Timer in Andrew Wiggins, KD.
Okay, here we go.
I like it.
Did you know that you're going to be getting the man known as Mr. Fantastic in this draft?
Who's Mr. Fantastic?
And Andrew Wiggins is Mr. Fantastic. Just listen to him as a youngster.
My name is Andrew Wiggins.
Okay, we don't want to hear all that. Let's get back to who they gonna pick.
Lord, you're going deep, Ernie.
Maple Jordan.
Real deep right now. Too much time on your hand, Ernie.
Sometimes it's fun to do your research like that.
Okay, we're getting close to the end.
Go through your starters for me, LeBron, and take a look at your team at this point.
I like my team. We got size, we got some shooting, we got some slashers, we got some passers. So got a couple champions as well. So I like my team, really do.
KD?
I like who we are right now. Got some young talent, got some big fellas. I think we can play small with this group. I like it.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube.
Okay,
For
I
live
missed
streaming
it.
Sports and premium content.
I gotta get y'all back to the funny part. Did I miss the joke part? Wait a minute. Let me get you to the. Okay, here we go.
Fantastic. I played the power forward position. My hometown is Toronto.
That's fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic news to you as well? Have you heard that one?
That's news for sure. Yeah, that's news.
Oh, my goodness.
Man, you giving yourself nicknames at 8.
You know what? He was also, when he was growing up, Maple Jordan, being from Canada.
Maple Jordan. You went
Maple-
deep, Ernie.
Maple Jordan.
Real deep right now. Too much time on your hand, Ernie.
Sometimes it's fun to do your research like that. So go through your starters for me, LeBron, and take a look at your team at this point.
So I guess I missed it. I can't find it. Oh wait.
Go to Kevin
Here we
Durant.
go.
You get Trae Young, and you get a first-timer in Andrew Wiggins, KD.
I like it.
Did you know that you're going to be getting the man known as Mr. Fantastic in this draft?
Who's Mr. Fantastic?
And Andrew Wiggins.
Okay. I clearly can't find it. So we're going to move on. At any rate, it was a funny moment. And it was them picking their teams. And it came down to Rudy Gobert and James Harden were the last two people. And Rudy Gobert is always the last person chosen. And so they were sitting there, and LeBron's trying not to laugh. He kind of is laughing. And Durant has this really straight face. Because listen, what he was not going to do is he was not going to pick James Harden. Okay? And so they were talking about it. He said, I need some size. And he's talking himself into, he goes, I'll take Rudy Gobert. And so James Harden is the last player selected. And he went to LeBron's team. So LeBron said, well, how is he healthy? Because he hasn't been playing, right? So then Charles Barkley makes a joke like, oh, it's traded. He got the trade now. He probably rubbing some icy hot on the hamstring right now. Anyway, he is not going to play in the NBA All-Star game and has said that he will not be available until after All-Star weekend. There were some shots of him shooting at practice yesterday or day before yesterday, and people are commenting, well, he looks good. Hamstring injuries are tricky. You just never really know like how they are healing. So who knows? But all the best to James Harden. I just think that James Harden is doing what James Harden does. And listen, he is one of the most talented players ever. But if you followed me for any amount of time on Chalk Talk, you heard me say this. I don't think he has the championship mindset, right? Being a champion is another level from just being really super talented. He's got a ton of talent. But what is it that makes you a champion, right? You don't get to just check out when you're mad. That's not what champions do. When you are a champion, you put it all on the line. And you feel like there's no way that you're going to be denied advancing or winning or doing whatever it takes to cross the finish line, to win game 6 in Golden State, or to win game 7 at home, to go to the NBA Finals, to not go 0 for 10, or to not take a shot for the first 8 minutes of a game against San Antonio. I mean, so yeah, I remember all of these things. I was at many of these games. That's not how champions show up. So we saw a better version, I think, of James Harden in terms of the other parts. Again, there's no denying how talented he is. He's offensively gifted in ways that many players probably wish they were. But champion, we'll see. And you never say never. I mean, people can grow and they can change, but just the way he handled leaving Brooklyn shows that some of that is the things about him that made him suspect in terms of having championship DNA. Those things obviously still exist, but we shall see. Charles says the Nets clearly won that deal. I think the Nets did too. I think the Nets won that deal. But then again, Charles, I also am not sure, because it depends on what you get from Ben Simmons, right? What you get from Ben Simmons, and I think it depends on what he gives you, and I don't think we really know. I don't think when does Ben Simmons come back? When does he play? And with that in mind, that could also determine who really won that trade. But just a Ben Simmons, even as he last played for the 76ers, and getting Seth Curry, who's a shooter, getting some draft picks, I mean, getting all that Brooklyn got, I think that they gave up a lot to get James Harden, but Daryl Morey made it very clear that he wanted James Harden. James Harden wanted more so to be with Daryl Morey than probably just to be with the 76ers, because Daryl will let him do whatever it is he wants. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see him after the All-Star break, and we'll see how he and Joel Embiid are able to work together. I mean, the thought of the two of them and what that could look like in a pick and roll, and him with the real big guy, how long will the Joel Embiid era last? it will be, it could be phenomenal. It just depends on which James shows up and if he's able to not be in his feelings and actually put the team first. We'll see. Time will tell. Time will tell. And we'll see about the Brooklyn Nets, and this whole Kyrie had another one of his kind of cryptic press conferences, comments about, him not being able to play, and I can't with Kyrie, so I'm just going to move on. All right, so listen, the Houston Rockets are, they're continuing to have some struggles. Last night they played, they lost in Utah. They play next. Here we are. They lost in Utah last night. I'm going back to the schedule. They play at Phoenix on Wednesday. Phoenix is playing some great basketball. That's probably the best backcourt in the NBA. And Chris Paul is playing outstanding basketball at the age of 36. And then they play the Clippers on Thursday. So they have 2 more games before the All-Star break. Then they have the break, and they're not in action again until next week on the 25th. They're playing at Orlando. Had a chance to talk with Stephen Silas and asked him what he wanted to really see in this final stretch with the team. And here's Stephen Silas about what he'd like to see heading into All-Star break from his squad.
We're in the stretch of the season that's called the last week before All-Star break. So keeping their concentration, keeping their focus, not having them think about whether the guys who are going to Cleveland thinking about that or the guys who are going to Cabo thinking about that, having them just really focus on these last 3 games being as laser focused as possible when we play these games. And it could be tough. It could definitely be tough last week, as I've seen year after year after year.
So, the first of those 3 games was last night in Utah, and they were not laser focused. He did not get what he was hoping to get from that game last night. Utah won the game. The final was 135-101, and they got off to not a great start, right? It wasn't pretty. And so here's Silas after the game last night, really talking about the way the team started and why he had to call the timeout so early.
Role would have helped because.
Let me go back to the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely troublesome. That's why I called the timeout with, I don't even know, it was like 4 minutes into the game. It was 14-2. And our defensive intensity wasn't there. It wasn't what it should be. This is the number 1 team in the league in offense. So you have to be on it, and you have to be willing to make the extra effort and willing to do both, help and recover. And we didn't do a great job of that. And this is a team that when you don't do a great job of that, they can make you look pretty bad on the defensive end. Well, they were getting downhill on their drives. They were offensive rebounding. They had 10 offensive rebounds in the first half. They were, once they were getting into the paint, it was the kicks to the three-point shooters. So they were doing a little bit of everything. But having a better impact on the ball when it comes to pick and roll would have helped, because as you saw when they were coming off, they were either getting all the way to the rim or they were like darting passes to teammates. And if you're allowed to dart passes and you're in help, you're not going to get there. They have to make those passes over high hands, over activity. So there's a little bit more time for you to get to your closeout. And we didn't have that.
Let's go Silas after last night's loss in Utah. It was not pretty. But, they're hoping for, to look better. I mean, it's a rough stretch. They're going to Phoenix. They're going to Phoenix tomorrow night, play Phoenix tomorrow night. And Phoenix, as I said, is 46-10, and if the playoffs were to start tomorrow, they'd be the number 1 seed in the West. They are 46-10. Golden State is a second seed at this point at 42-16. Memphis, it comes in third at 40-18. So those are the top 3 teams right now as it relates to the playoffs. But just in terms of standings, they're both in the Pacific, right? And so Phoenix and Golden State are 1 and 2 out in the West, in the Pacific. So in that division, it's Phoenix, Golden State, the Clippers. The Lakers are 26-31. Like at this point, they'll be good, doing well to even make the playoffs. Maybe they'll get in some sort of a play-in game. And Sacramento's at 22-37. Of course, Houston is bringing up the rear in the Western Conference with a record of 15-41. They are 1-9 in their last 10 games. So they could use a win, right? They could really use a win. I don't know if getting one in Phoenix is going to be the answer, but they don't have the worst record in the league. Detroit is 12-45. Orlando is 13-46. So while Houston is 1-9 in their last 10 games, Phoenix is 9-1. So, it'll be an uphill climb for the Rockets tomorrow night, but they could win. It'd be tough to win, but they've got to go out and play, and they've got to show up better than they did last night. You can't show up like that and dig that kind of a hole for yourself against teams that are as good as a Phoenix, and then of course a Utah. Utah is the top seed in the Northwest division of the Western Conference. They're in first place with 36-21 record, followed by Denver at 32-25 and Minnesota at 30-27. So that kind of rounds out your week. That's going to do it for Chalk Talk for today. Listen, I was hoping to have a better Major League Baseball lockout update for you, and we don't have one yet. I did see an interview yesterday with Joe Buck, who calls the World Series for Fox and the weekly game of the week for Fox, who said, hey, he expects something to maybe happen in the next couple of weeks, because what they can't really afford to do is to not start the season. Like, they could start the season without a CBA, without a collective bargaining agreement. It's the owners who have locked out the players. The players are not striking, but both sides are still a ways apart. And for instance, the owners, one of the things the owners want is they don't want to pay minor league players. They don't want to pay for spring training. So, minor leaguers don't make a lot of money anyway. And they also are requesting, the latest thing is that they requested to the ability to eliminate hundreds of minor league roster spots, right? They've already gotten rid of quite a few minor league teams, but they're currently allowed to employ up to 180 minor league players at any time. The league's proposal would have kept that number in place for the 2022 season. Afterward, the commissioner would have been able to adjust the cap up or down for the rest of the CBA, which is often about 5 years. So a reduction of 30 minor league jobs per organization would result in the unemployment of 900 players across baseball. So when you say, they're trying to get rid of some players, that gives you some perspective. That's 900 players if you go across the league. This would be in addition to the jobs that were lost when the league slashed more than 40 minor league affiliates 2 years ago. So the farm system has already been shrunk or depleted, however you want to look at it. So the owners, are playing a little hardball. Remember they locked the players out when the last CBA expired in December. They did not have to do that. The two sides could have continued to negotiate as part of the last CBA's sunset provisions, which means they could have continued to move forward head to spring training, not risk the start of opening day being pushed back or not being, met. And at the time, the commissioner said it was a defensive mechanism to really speed up negotiations. And listen, the owners and Manfred have waited more than 6 weeks to make their first proposal to the players. So is that really operating in good faith? I don't think so. The last time that they met was last Saturday. The next negotiating session has not been scheduled yet. Spring training was originally scheduled to open this week. So that's the update. I will work to get Jeremy Booth back on because he's all things baseball. He can help us break it down more, talk to us about a lot of it, and he makes it make a lot of sense. So, that video was hot. Anyway, hey, listen, thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk. I appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that share button so that you can share this video with your online community on whichever platform you're watching it. Remember that Chalk Talk is brought to you by Kimmy Treats. You can go to kimmytreats.com listen, especially now, it's a great time to get some body butter. It's not hard to ship because it's not super hot anywhere, but it's great for your dry skin, for those of you who may have eczema, and especially with all of the hand sanitizer and hand washing that we're doing, you need this Skinlicious. It's the body butter by Kimmy Treats. So go online to kimmytreats.com, order your body butter and your popcorn today, and let me know what you think about it. In the meantime, remember, make sure that you are vaccinated. Make sure that if you're vaccinated, go ahead and get boosted. If you've got young children, really, really protect them and let them get the vaccine, those who are 5 and older, who are eligible for the vaccine. And then also make sure that you're still practicing some social distancing. When you're going in really crowded places, wear your mask. I wear my mask and I double mask certain places because we're not done. Things are a lot better, but every time things get a lot better, we get tripped up and we fall back off the cliff and it gets really bad. So let's try to hold on a little bit longer so that we can really, really start to get back to whatever the new normal is going to look like. Okay. And make sure that you're doing something kind for yourself and something kind for somebody else. Make it a great week, everybody. I'll see you next Tuesday on Chalk Talk at 10:10, wherever you're watching it live today. Have a great week.